When I was younger, and my youngest son was much younger, I got approached by a teacher one day, and they told me I had to medicate him. And I said no. And I didn't know why I said no. I just felt like that this was usurping my role as a parent. I didn't know what an SSRI was. I'd never looked at people and the historical impact of SSRIs and how many times these kids that show up at these spree shooting parties, bringing the guns themselves, actually have been exposed to them. And then I heard about and talked to my next guest. She is fresh off of a fight in the state of New Mexico where I'll let her tell you about it. But my resident in-house specialist when it comes to the SSRI debate is Dr. Linda Lagemann. Good morning, Doctor.
Yes, I'm fresh off the fight in New Mexico, and we took some doing, but New Mexico has now signed into law a bill that does a couple things. I mean, one, it protects parents' rights, which you're bringing up, so that the school or nobody can coerce them or insist that they put their child on a psychotropic medication. And the other thing it does is says that a parent's refusal to administer a psychotropic drug that has been prescribed is not ground for protective custody, for the Child Protective Services to take the child, because this has happened across the country. You talk about parents' rights being usurped. That's the ultimate. So now in New Mexico, this has been, put into law that can't happen. I was listening earlier, and, you brought up a number of things that were incredibly interesting about getting background checks.
Yes.
And how you made the point, you're saying that they're going to lower the bar on that.
Yes.
And I don't know if you saw this article, but this is exactly what is going on. There was a Washington Post April 9th. Washington Post had this headline: 22 million violently angry Americans have gun access, study finds.
I saw that.
You saw that. So that's fear-mongering. And, mongering, actually, I just looked it up so I can say, is the use of fear to influence the opinions and actions of others towards some specific end.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, now, you and I have talked offline, and you know that I'm incredibly angry, too.
Don't say that. You're going to get a background check, because what they're looking at is anybody who's got an, quote, anger disorder should not be able to get a gun.
Well, that's all well and good, and I'm sure they'll try to push that as well. And before long, it'll be people that don't have motor skills, which means Gabrielle Giffords can't shoot no more. But that's all beside the point. They're going to go after it at any angle. Yeah. When I'm talking about lowering the bar, for the longest time they've been doing this with the veterans, and just because these guys get out there and get their VA disability check, and I don't know what criteria they have to reach in order to not look irresponsible. Mm-hmm. But apparently buying lotto tickets and buying a bunch of Slim Jims and Pabst Blue Ribbon is not the way they want them to go. Mm-hmm. And then they become a prohibited person because they don't know how to spend money. That was never what the Second Amendment was intended to do. And these guys, they prostitute the whole process every time they turn around. But you know what? I'm going off on a tangent. What did New Mexico do? Yeah. Who in New Mexico got this to where you say this is happening all over the country? In New Mexico, they took a look at it. How did that happen?
Well, this was actually Citizens Commission on Human Rights that I'm the commissioner for. So CCHR, which people can go to that website. There's a ton of incredibly important information there. CCHRINT.org. The INT is for international. CCHR, Citizens Commission on Human Rights, approached a couple of the representatives and senators there, but Representative Nora Espinoza, really. There were a number of people who had similar experiences. So they took this issue on and drafted legislation with the help of CCHR that did that. And I went in and testified, gave the expert testimony through the House committees and then, the floor votes and the Senate committees. And once people were fully informed, this is the thing, people are not aware generally of what's going on because it isn't in the regular news. You know this.
How about that, huh?
You said another thing that I loved. I'm going to quote you probably. You said the scared sheep are being led by the wolves.
Yes.
And that is so true. And that's, the media keeps everybody scared, keeps everybody distracted from what the real issues are, which, we'll get back to how you started on this and we started on this, which is the SSRI antidepressants. But the real issues are the psychotropic drugs that are altering people's minds, are known to do that, have warning labels about how they do that, and all the ways they do it are recipes for violence and suicide. But people are being distracted and put into fighting each other about Second Amendment versus gun control so that they are not looking at the psychiatric drugs. But yeah, people, the scared sheep are being led by the wolves right down the path of let's increase more mental health spending, more psychiatric drugs, more screenings for mental illness so we can get more people on drugs, and all the while ignoring the solid research that even the FDA that has approved these drugs as safe and effective has access to, and they just keep adding warnings to the labels, but they don't pull them from the market. They know they cause violence. And you are right. All of these spree killings, and I don't even use the word spree shootings because it's not all guns. They are weird spree killings, and they involve guns sometimes. They involve cars, like mowing people over. They involve drowning one's children in a bathtub. Bizarre things that people would not normally do. And you have to look at not the means that they use to do it. You have to look at what altered their mind to make a person do the unthinkable, and that's the psychotropic drugs. And so backing up, like New Mexico and children, because there's a massive increase in drugging of children, massive labeling of kids, and it's the creative kids, the smart kids, the ones who are bored, who should be bored in a lot of these classrooms. Those are the ones that are being labeled and drugged.
Most of them are most of them boys?
Most of them are boys. There's definitely attack on boys. 20% of all high school boys are labeled with ADHD now in this country. 20% of all high school boys have been told they're defective, they have a mental disorder, they're ADHD, and they need drugs to manage themselves for the rest of their lives. So that in itself is phenomenally damaging.
My guest this hour, because she's always out there fighting, and she started, now there's only 49 states that might decide to drug your child and make it, or take your child from you. She's been on a SSRI crusade for well before I ever knew her. She is Dr. Linda Lagemann. Now that you've done that in New Mexico, are you going to spread your wings and start spreading this gospel for all of us?
Yes. This is, every state really needs this. And it is a matter of, either people that are informed telling their representatives that they want this, telling their school board. But what I was saying before, when I actually got in front of people, and I am telling you, I was going morning to evening briefing representatives and senators about these issues. When they got the actual information, people do recognize the truth when they hear it. And even though this started out not necessarily popular, in the end, after lots and lots of work, this bill passed unanimously. Now, something like that shows you that people don't have the information, but when they get the information, they will do the right thing. And really, people should be fighting for this in their states, because we've got to the point here where it's become normal to drug kids. 1 in 6 12 to 17-year-old children is on a psychotropic drug. So that's 12 to 17-year-olds, the age that,
You've told me about instances. How young have you heard about them being drugged?
We're babies.
Babies.
Babies. I know this is hard for people to believe, but this is data from IMS Health. This is the largest, data analytics that looks at all healthcare transactions. 1 in 70 preschoolers right now in the U.S. is on a psychiatric drug. Preschoolers. And there are babies, I'm talking birth to 23 months old, so babies. It would take 3.5 football stadiums to fit all of the babies that are on a psychiatric drug. These are drugs that the mechanism of action is to impact brain chemistry. We're doing this to children whose brains are developing, and all the way down to infants. So that's hard for a lot of people to take in. But we have a very serious situation. People need to wake up and not take this for granted, not think these are safe. They're anything but safe. And it has gotten to the point, like I said, we've been asleep while the American Psychiatric Association and the pharmaceutical industry have been busy at work with all their advertising and made it seem normal to the point that now, if you don't put your kid on a drug, it could be medical neglect, and your kid could be removed. And it's because of trust and granting this authority to doctors and the system that is entirely unwarranted. I do think most parents mean well, and they've been brought up to think that the doctor is the expert. And we've got all kinds of things brainwashing us, telling us that. But as you and I have talked many times, they're not. These things are voted on. It's influenced by greed and money. The diagnoses are voted on. They're not, legitimate. There's no legitimate reason to call them a disorder, a mental disorder. It's a medical term that is only justification is to promote marketing of drugs. These are the real problems, the real behaviors and real things that people have to deal with, but they are not mental diseases, mental disorders, and they don't need drugs. Anyway, most people have listened to the advertising, and when the school tells them, hey, your child needs this, they don't have the same good instincts that you had to say, no, this just does not seem right. Well, actually, I think they do. I think their common sense tells them no, but they override that because they think, well, this is an expert, and they must know better than I do. And I want any listener to know, no, that is not true. They do not know better than you do. They're being paid.
When I was in the during the first Persian Gulf, when we were flying cruise missiles into windows, and everybody's like, "That's outrageous, Frady. You were part of that. Wasn't that outrageous?" I just looked at them and said, yes, those guys are the experts at what they're doing. And when they did it for the first time in the real world and it worked, there was a lot of high fives going around because they didn't know if it was going to work. So I always look at the experts as somewhat of a shade tree 52 pickup kind of thing. If they get out there and prescribe something and it doesn't work, but it doesn't kill you, that means they can always back up, punt that one, and go to something else. If they prescribe something that does work, then they get to say, I'm an expert. So I'm not sitting around there placing a whole lot of,
right.
I look at everything with a jaundiced eye. I look like my mother takes enough drugs on a daily basis. I mean, she showed me her tray of prescriptions. I don't even know how she has time to take all this stuff during the course of the day. Tell everybody how they can find this website that you've got going where you're going out there and knocking stupid laws down with it.
So people can go to cchrint.org, and there's lots of info there. And if they want to get in touch with me directly, drlagemann.com, DRLAGEMANN. Happy to be in touch with people.
This thing, it's bad enough that it takes regular kids and turns them into shooters or stabbers or burners. Or just malcontents or anything. I would love for the psychiatric community and Big-Pharma to sit back, and I would love to find out that Steve Jobs took them, or that any captain of industry that ever got out there that took a risk and changed the world as we know it, they took them. Because I kind of think they probably didn't. That their process was allowed to evolve the way it was.
Do you sometimes feel a bit blah? No matter what you do, just blah. You may have tripolar disorder. Don't worry, we've got a drug for that. Side effects may include anxiety, delusions, hallucinations, emotional numbing, uncontrollable shaking, weight gain, mania, psychosis, suicidal tendencies, homicidal ideation, panic attacks, and paranoia.
From the age of 10, docs pumped mind-altering meds into Adam Lanza. Pretty much every school shooter in the past decade was on prescription drugs. On antidepressants, kids are 10 times more likely to get violent. Suicides are even more widespread.
You take a mortal man, you put him on psychotropics, have him play violent video games, and join the military. Starts to hear voices. He gets through 2 checkpoints because he has a top secret security clearance. Shoots a bunch of people. So now America has to turn its guns in. Because Dianne Feinstein has the moral high ground.
I feel like I have to wind myself up just to get out of bed. Then, well, I have to keep winding myself up to deal with the sadness, the loss of interest, the trouble concentrating, lack of energy.
Acting like a robot.
Politicians forcing Pharmageddon on Americans.
How about Prozac? You know the number one, oh, that's the big sponsor, isn't it? Or that whole class of drugs.
Let me ask you a question.
Oh, gotta cut that off, don't you? Don't want to talk about the U.S. number one cause of death is suicide now because they give people suicide mass murder pills.
Calm down.
Your answer is give more money to the psychiatrists and psychologists to put more crazy people on drugs that make them kill people, Pierce.
Let's try.
Walking, eating, driving, or engaging in other activities while asleep without remembering it the next day have been reported. Abnormal behaviors may include aggressiveness, agitation, hallucinations, or confusion. In depressed patients, worsening of depression, including risk of suicide, may occur. Alcohol may increase these risks.
When a mother chops her kids up with a cleaver because she's on serotonin.
Tell me why I'm wrong.
Why don't you want to get rid of the drugs? Because they're half your sponsors?
Suicide and malformations mainstream media won't report because for every dollar drug firms spend on research, they hand out 19 times more to media on commercials. Big-Pharma shills an astonishing $100 billion on ads to brainwash you into buying. Top spender is Pfizer with this notorious antidepressant Zoloft. Mainstream media gratefully pockets the fortune, and who cares about the viewers?
The industry is responsible to Wall Street.
America's number one cause of unnatural death now is suicide.
Alex,
not automobile accident, not cancer, not...
You accuse me of attacking the Second Amendment of the Constitution.
I want to get people off pills that the insert says will make you commit suicide and kill people.
Alex, let's get about the Second Amendment.
I want to blame the real culprit. Suicide pills. Mass murder pills.
Okay.
In your son's situation, I would recommend that we go with medication. We can start him off with these. Side effects include mania, aggression, hostility, psychosis, homicidal ideation. At least 8 of the recent school shooters have taken these. Let's see. We've got Springfield, Oregon school shootings, the Red Lake, Minnesota school murders, and, the Columbine massacre. But it's really up to you.
Have you been diagnosed with depression and struggle with sadness?
Maybe you're scared of being criticized.
Ask your doctor about Effexor XL. Ask your doctor about Cymbalta.
Talk to your doctor about Zoloft.
So talk to your healthcare professional.
Your doctor today. Your doctor. Tell your doctor. Contact your doctor immediately. Talk with your doctor.
Every day, psychotropic drugs cause serious adverse reactions. And while psychiatrists and drug companies fully understand the dangers of the drugs they sell, their unsuspecting customers are left to suffer the consequences.
Everything became worse. Each mood swing was worse.
He would have chronic headaches, chronic, nausea, not feeling good.
She was very agitated, very, very jumpy.
She was having horrible hallucinations. Her personality was disintegrating.
Once he started on that drug, the cloud just stayed over him and stayed over him and stayed over him. It got darker and darker.
He thought there wasn't anything worth living to kill himself. That was not me. That was the drugs.
At least I would like to have said, I love you. I didn't get a chance to do that.
In addition to crippling scores of people daily, every month, psychiatric drugs kill an estimated 3,000. But the human devastation would never have gotten this high if psychiatrists hadn't worked hand in hand with drug companies to promote their drugs to doctors throughout the world. Today, 70% of all psychiatric drugs are prescribed by general physicians. And how is this accomplished? Marketing.
It's about creating a good story that uses science, that convinces a physician to think about writing a prescription.
This is not science. This is incredibly effective marketing. It has nothing to do with science.
They use what I call statistical contortionism. Basically just skew the numbers, make everything look fantastic, you hide the bad numbers.
They're learning every trick in the book. They're evolving into efficient marketing machines, and it's working.
There's definitely an unholy alliance between psychiatry and pharmaceutical sales. That's a marriage made in heaven.
They're like conjoined twins. They're joined at the wallet.
And with 374 mental disorders filling Psychiatry's diagnostic manual, and more on the way, business is booming. Pharmaceutical companies have expanded their roster of psychotropic drugs from 44 in 1966 to 174 today. The top 5 psychotropic drugs combined gross more money than the gross national product of each of over half the countries on Earth. Altogether, the psychiatric industry rakes in $1/3 of $1 trillion a year. How could this have happened? It's a tale of deception that may be difficult to believe, but fatal to ignore.